Test 1, 2. What a difference.
Maybe. It's.
Tech services. We're not able to log into this computer using our county username and password.
Yeah. There is something. Yeah.
Say hi to Alex for me if I don't get a chance.
First day of school.
I wish I could hear all about it, but you want to hear all about it first.
Yeah. Okay, well, the bell has rung and it's 5:30 and I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals to order. So Ms. Nestor Jelen, would you kindly call the roll?
Sure, Margaret, and we might need a few minutes because the internet is down and so we're not able to access the PowerPoint or the packet. So I can call the roll, but beyond that, if I could get a few minutes and we'll get set up
Sure.
here.
Sure, of
Okay.
course.
Margaret Clements.
Here,
Skip Daly,
Here.
Pamela Davidson,
I'm here.
Guy Loftman,
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
Okay, we have 5 members, 4 in person and a quorum.
okay, we'll take a few minutes to try to resolve the Wi-Fi issue, but if it's not possible to resolve the Wi-Fi issue, let's continue to try to conduct the county's BZA business without it, because, well, I'm hooked onto my cell phone.
Okay.
So I'm able to access the packet. And if anyone wants to look on with me, they can. And we can maybe move through this and make sure that people have one of the last fine days of summer, a little bit of sunshine left.
We can't see Wi-Fi, but people at home, if they're joining a meeting remotely, can see
Yes.
can see it. So
Yes.
we're the
Yes.
only unions for this. So if we couldn't be, if the public couldn't see us, then I was concerned. That's
Yes.
not the case. I think we should proceed.
Sure, but the staff has asked for a little time because they have prepared the packets and they'd like to share them. So we'll give it a few minutes and see what can be done for the resolution of the Wi-Fi, but otherwise we'll move forward.
And we often have members of the audience refer to certain slides that we're looking at. So that's a disadvantage too, because that does happen.
Yeah, it is a
Yes.
disadvantage.
It is a
It's-
disadvantage,
it's
but maybe we can
absolutely-
go.
We are victims of our
I don't know what.
technology.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, of
So
course.
here's the packet. Do you want to see anything? Oh,
And I,
okay. Okay,
and so please.
okay.
Thank goodness for this.
Yes, and I would like you to make an announcement that the first 4 items on the agenda under old business, the Jacquard residential storage structure size variance has been withdrawn. So if anybody is here for the first 4 items concerning a storage shed on Trailway Drive, we will not be hearing that tonight because I think it's now in compliance.
Just to clarify, sorry, that was a little bit confusing in the agenda. The first item 19A was withdrawn,
I
but
see.
19B, C,
I
and
see.
D are
Okay.
still on the agenda.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, forgive me. I thought, okay, I didn't read it correctly. Okay. Oh, and I'll have to recuse myself from that one. Yeah. Yeah. So Skip, you'll have to handle that one. I'll go. The first case, the 2, 3, 4. Because I'll recuse myself. I'll just go out into the hall.
You do that.
Yeah. Sure.
Tech services, can
I get mine tomorrow. I'm always fuzzy. I don't know what to do about it. I don't want to use product, you know.
Test, test.
Do you want to use? Do you want to use? Because it's builder? Let me know. Yeah.
They all say. It's just a nice machine. No one does it. Because it's not a nice machine. All of the underlying. Board. So that was all. Except I have to do the work, I mean, actually, I haven't seen that.
Just like 30 more seconds.
Look at that. How small is that? I can't do it. I tend to find the speaker.
I'm sorry.
All right, is that okay?
Okay.
This should work. Okay, I think we can get started.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Is the Wi-Fi issue resolved?
We have a workaround.
We have a workaround. Wow, thank you. Thank you all for
Thank
making
you,
that
staff.
workaround.
Thank you.
Yes. So we've had the roll call and now if you would be, is there a motion to introduce the evidence?
I will move to introduce the. I will move to introduce the evidence.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to introduce the evidence. I would like to introduce the following into the evidence: the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Zoning Ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Subdivision Control Ordinance as adopted and amended, the Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases as advertised for a hearing on tonight's schedule.
Okay, I move to approve.
I second that.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Skip Daly,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Guy Lockman,
Yes.
B.
The sound went away. Is there somebody talking? I can't hear.
Yes, we're asking you to approve the evidence.
Yes, but I heard that right up to Pam Davidson and then no more sound. Just you.
Just me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. You may have to log off and re-log in again. It's us. Okay, never mind. Now, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda as advertised?
I move tonight to approve tonight's agenda as advertised.
I second that. And amended, advertised and amended.
and amend it. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna finish calling the roll on the agenda. Sorry, Margaret Clemens.
Yes,
Okay, and then D Owens.
Yes,
Okay, and then the next, the previous item was for the introduction of evidence,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
yes,
Okay, and D Owens.
yes.
yes,
Okay, and then I'll continue calling the roll for the agenda. So Skip Daly,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Guy Loftman.
Yes.
Okay, it was 5-0.
Okay, and there are no minutes to approve. And on the first case, I'm going to recuse myself, and the vice chair, Skip Daly, will introduce this and discuss this case. Thank you. And I'll return after the case is finished.
All right, we will introduce cases. Variance 2319B, variance 2319C, and variance 2319D. And if we could begin with staff's presentation, please.
Thank you. Okay. So this is there's multiple variances for this item. It was an old business item, or is an old business item, excuse me. So we did hear this prior, but it was only very briefly.
Can D hear? Oh, okay.
yes, I
just-
can hear just fine. Thank you.
All right, I didn't want to leave you out. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc.
So there are 3 variance requests with this petition. There is a front yard setback variance, chapter 804, a buildable area variance pertaining to the slope, 15% slope to chapter 804, as well as an environmental constraints overlay area 2 variance to chapter 825. Purpose of this variances are to construct a 840 square foot detached residential storage structure. That's a reduction in size from the last time that this was mentioned at the June 2nd BZA meeting. The petitioner owns several parcels in the vicinity of the petition site, including 2 adjacent parcels to the west. The petitioner has verbally committed to combining the petition site with the immediately adjacent parcel to the west, represented by the parcel number you see on the screen. It's also in the packet, in order to avoid an additional variance request for a side yard setback. When we get to the site plans for the petitioner, we will show you exactly what we mean by that and show more detail about where the structure will actually be located. The petitioner has submitted a residential pole barn structure permit in March. And after review of that and communications with staff, it was determined that the variances that are on the docket for tonight would be necessary. There will be an encroachment of the proposed structure into slopes greater than 15%, which would trigger the 15% slope variance from chapter 804, as well as the eco area 2 variance to chapter 825. And that variance is in place because the property is within area 2 of the environmental constraints overlay, also known as the Lake Monroe watershed or the Lake Ripley watershed. So like I stated before, this petition was heard at the June 7th, 2023 BZA meeting. The BZA voted to continue this petition based upon new information submitted by the petitioner during the meeting. And that was that the petitioner was planning to reduce the structure's size. Originally, we had another variance request within this petition about the storage structure size. There is a limit of 875 square feet in this zoning district for a storage structure that's placed on a property that does not have a principal use structure on it. And sometimes referred to, or most of the time, the principal use structure is a residence. So then, since this property is vacant, they would have needed that variance request. But like I said, they've reduced the size to 840 square feet, which simply just removes that request. Here we have the location map. It's on 6885 East Trailway Drive. That address is the petitioner's address. And then this subject parcel is 2 parcels to the east along East Trailway. It does have frontage on East Trailway. Here we have the site condition map. The green lettering shows you the parcels that I've just mentioned. The petitioner's parcel is on the left side of the screen, and the petition site is the right side of the screen. There is a parcel in between that's also owned by the petitioner, and that is the one that they intend to combine in order to avoid a side yard setback. As you'll note on this map, the buildable area, that is all the area not color coded in red, is very limited. All the areas in red are over 15% in slope. So the petitioner has requested the front yard setback to and as well as the buildable areas setback or variances, excuse me, in order to find a location that serves least amount of land and still meets their needs for the storage structure. These next few slides are just some pictures on the property. So you'll note that there is a little bit of a ditch or ravine that does cross over the entire frontage of the lot. And then these pictures here in the background, you can see the petitioner's residence. And you can kind of tell in some of these pictures that the slope kind of teeters down towards the right side of the screen. Some more pictures here. Continue. And we can come back to any of these pictures if we'd like. Again, there's the roadway in the right picture, as well as that drainage ditch. The petitioner does intend on building getting a driveway permit, as well as constructing a culvert if necessary in order to accommodate a driveway cut and have enough space for them to pull a boat for the residential storage structure. And that one there is just aerial pictometry of the site. We'll come back to it if need be. And then here on this page, we have, it's kind of hard to see, but it's also included in the packet. This is the revised letter from the petitioner, the Jacquards. So it does include updated information as well as more detailed analysis of the rationale as to why they selected the location that they're choosing in order to abide by as least amount of disturbance as possible, but as well as addressing other constraints, such as a power line that runs along the frontage of these properties along East Trailway, as well as the ditch, and among a few other things. Okay, so here we have the petitioner's site plan. The small square in the bottom right-hand corner is the proposed location. It would meet the side setback on the, would be the eastern portion, as well as the western portion in this iteration. You'll note that the structure is placed extremely close to the roadway, and that is showing their request for the front yard setback. And that's with the intent to reduce the amount of disturbance into those 15% slope areas. Here is a diagram of the proposed structure submitted by the petitioner, as well as some measurements. And then here is an additional page of writing from the petitioner that was included with that drawing. And this is all included in the packet, so it's probably easiest to see it there. Okay, here is a survey of the area that was submitted to staff. So this does provide some information regarding East Trailway Drive in this area, as well as a number of covenants and restrictions for lots in this area. Planning staff does not, the planning department does not enforce covenants and restrictions from subdivision plats. Those are enforced by an HOA or through civil suit by property owners. So although there may be some constraints that are outlined in those covenants and restrictions, the zoning ordinance does not have authority on covering those. And this is just a zoomed in version of that, just to get a better idea of the sites that we're talking about. And here is some images of some of those covenants and restrictions that I spoke of. So we can come back to review those if needed. And here we have some pictures submitted by the petitioner of their, the location of the driveway that they want to install for this structure. And we do have one letter of support that was submitted. We did have this at the last meeting. I don't believe it was included in the packet because it came in a little late, but it was in the PowerPoint. So we do have at least one letter of support. It was included in the packet, so we can come back to it if needed. And then we do have some letters of opposition, primarily from one individual, the property owner to the south, submitted a letter of opposition, and also retained the assistance of Carmen Parker law firm to produce a letter of opposition, as well as Abram Moss to produce a letter of opposition with respect to the site's physical constraints. And that's also included in the PowerPoint and the packet. I'm just scrolling through these. Again, all of these are in the packet. This image here was included in the original letter of opposition from Abrams Moss. However, the storage structure size has been reduced, so this item here is not completely accurate, although the outlining of the parcel lines and the slope area does remain.
Could we go back to that last one?
Yeah.
This does, is the green line the 15% slope?
I think so.
Because
Yes.
it doesn't have it in red. So I'm just, it's a change in presentation. I want to make sure I understand it. And that's the green line. Thank you. I
Yes,
just
and
wanted to
those
make
yellow
sure.
rectangles, those were some proposed locations for the storage structure at the last variance hearing. However, it's reduced in size, so those yellow rectangles are not representative of what's being requested today.
But what is being requested today still enters goes on
Yes.
the above the green line.
Yes, it does still encroach slightly into the 15% area.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Myers, could you scroll back to the last and freeze it there for a quick moment?
I think this is also the letter of support, I believe, from, yes, this is from Nicole Jacquard. This is a letter of support.
Okay,
That's the same letter that. I
it's
had.
the same letter that was
Yes,
previous. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I did not know I kept that slide too. So. Okay, so that brings us to the staff's recommendation. As stated, the first variance, VAR 2319A, was withdrawn because it is no longer applicable. The petitioner has reduced the storage structure size to meet the requirement of 875 square feet. VAR 23-19B, the front yard setback variance, chapter 804, staff does recommend approval of that variance request with one condition, that a surveyor stake the front property line so that staff can confirm that the location of the structure will indeed be on the property and not encroach into, say, right of way or anything like that. And then VAR 2319C and D, which are the buildable area, 15% slopes, chapter 804, and the eco area 2. chapter 825. Staff recommends denial of both of those items. Primarily citing practical difficulties are not met in that the structure could be further reduced to eliminate the buildable area encroachment. I'll now take any questions.
Yeah, I do have questions. How small does the building have to get to make it fit?
That's a good question. I did not perform an analysis to see what the exact square footage would be needed. If we go back to the petitioner's site plan, you can see that it just slightly encroaches. It's a few slides up. Thank you. Right there. So you can see the rectangle in the bottom right-hand corner. There's still, a sizable area that would encroach into the slopes. And with that, the petitioner certainly has their reasoning for a certain size of the structure. It's just with the strict application of the zoning ordinance, theoretically, a structure could be reduced in size and meet buildable area in the area.
Okay, yeah, it could be, but it would be reduced so small that wouldn't be worthwhile. I also note that in the letter from the attorney of the person who is against it, points out that the warranty deed says that there's no such thing as, they're not allowed to have storage facilities according to the deed. But it's got a garage door and a service door, so that means it's a garage. That's not a storage facility. So I don't know if we're calling it a storage facility, but it's actually just a garage, as far as I can tell. And it looks like they've tried to design it such that it fits exactly with the design of the house and the area. So understanding that you have to tell us that there's a 15% slope problem in the Echo 2 area. It's not an egregious issue in my book, but I'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any other?
I would just.
Oh.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to address two items. So one is the fact that the petitioner could potentially obtain a professional land use survey indicating the exact location of the 15% slope. This data that you have on the screen here is relying on our parcel data, which is not very exact. So it could be that they do have more area, but they haven't been able to provide us with better available data because we're relying on this information from our layer. The second thing I want to bring up is your discussion of the storage structure. So one of the first items that was titled for this variance was the residential storage structure. That's just the naming of a accessory structure that we give when there's not a primary use on the lot. So there's not a home on this lot. So we call it a residential storage structure. That could mean a garage by any other naming, but it's just under the ordinance, we call it a residential storage structure because there's not a presence of a home. So I wanted to clarify that.
Okay, and they have agreed to tie the lots together, so they would be all in one. So that covers that. Okay, thank you.
I will add one more clarifying point to that, Dee. They own all three lots that you can see on the screen here. The one lot to the farthest east or right side of the screen, that is one lot, and then there's one in between, and then there's the home lot on the far left side or west side of the screen. They are committing to combining the two parcels that you see on the right side, which would still not include the home. There were planning staff and the highway department about combining all three. However, according to the highway department's code, only one driveway cut is allowed per lot. So effectively, if they combined all three, they would not be permitted a driveway cut from the highway department's requirements. So
Right.
They had to combine, there are 4 tracks, is that right?
They're
Or-
gonna only combine two.
Right, but they are, if I'm looking at the picture, the far left is the home.
No,
Right.
there's three parcels owned by the petitioner.
Okay,
Yes,
The one you see in the middle labeled 700
yes.
or what has the number 700 on it. That is the furthest west and that's where the homestead is.
Okay,
The
I was-
further two to the right or to the center and the east. Those are each separate parcels that they plan to combine into one parcel. And that allegedly is for to have the second curb cut into the new proposed garage.
right. And by keeping them separate, then they might be entitled to a curb cut and they avoid the side setbacks. They might,
Yeah,
a driveway. a
The
driveway, yeah.
eastern side set on the middle parcel would
Okay.
not.
I
be
was a
an
little
issue.
confused. I feel straightened out and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a question and it goes to Dee's point as well. We heard somewhere they want to store a boat. When you read the documents, it's referred to as a pole barn in one place, as a shed in one place, whatever. So the size seems to matter in terms of, you know, Dee said, is it a garage? Because garage, you have to have enough length to park a car in. So the size could be determinative. So that's my first question. In terms of those, a pole barn sounds bigger to me than a garage. Gee, it sounds bigger, but I don't really know. I guess at the end of the day, it's the dimensions. But my question is, looking at this topography, is there any place on this property that you wouldn't violate the slope or setback restrictions because of how steep it looks or how uneven it looks? Would there be any building site that would work?
I believe he mentioned at the top of his presentation that the only buildable area in any three of those parcels are the ones in front of you on the screen that are not, well, pinkish, rosy.
The
Those
yellow
all
boxes.
Those all represent a 15-degree or greater pitch in elevation on the land. So the only buildable is the whitish, grayish area. And that's why I'm guessing they are looking for the front setback to put it so close to the road because nothing else on their property is buildable according to the county code. Does that answer your question?
yeah, I can further expand on those. So for your first question, certainly from the building department's perspective, a residential accessory structure and a residential pole barn are two separate permit processes. I do not know, Jackie might be able to chime in on the actual difference from a building department perspective of what the difference between a pole barn and a storage structure is, or accessory structure, excuse me. But yes, oftentimes in our viewpoint, we see the terms shed, garage, pole barn used pretty interchangeably. I do know that, you know, many would say pole barn is a very specific type of structure though. But from a planning department's perspective, this structure would be permitted as a residential accessory structure. So that's your first question. The second question about where on the property is there anywhere that's buildable? As Skip mentioned, yes, everywhere that's not colored in red is the buildable area that's under 15% slope. So you'll note that there is a sizable amount of area kind of right along the shared property line between the two parcels in question. However, there are other constraints to selecting that area. There is the ditch that crosses along the frontage of both these lots along East Trailway. So that would be a, it would take a lot of effort to build up the driveway to cross over that ditch as well as the slope of the land that is in that area. So that's why they've selected the location that it does. It best suits for a driveway, but also takes up as much buildable area as it can. But again, with the strict application of the zoning ordinance with each of the variances, That's why planning staff's recommendation is the way it is. And I'm sure the petitioner will have more rationale to explain their location selection.
And Mr. Myers, before we bring up the petitioner or his or her representative, I'm seeing 30 feet in length heading north-south on the building. And I'm seeing kind of a wavy red on the screen regarding the 15-degree slope. Do you know how much? I know you said that you don't have an actual land use survey, but can you guesstimate how much of that 30 feet? It looks to me, if I'm just doing a scale, it looks like about 5 feet on one side and maybe 3 feet on the other, heading east to west. Is that right?
Yeah, without having the structure on map that is used right now, or GIS, it's hard to see the scale of it.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I would be able to measure that if I had the ability to on the computer right now, to give you a better estimate. But looking at it from where I'm sitting, looks like an encroachment of at least, 8 to 10 feet from
Okay.
behind of where the structure is.
It looks roughly about 15 to 20% of the entire structure is my guess. And my follow-up question to that is, I see all the red and that's behind that to the north. 15 degrees. It's 15 or more. Are we talking 15 to 18 degrees for that first 10 feet that we're talking about? Is that fair?
Yeah, would you, Sean, will you scroll up to the slope map itself? That has the actual percentages listed there. I think it just shows as greater than 15% here.
Right. That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, if I, again,
But to your recollection, after a site visit, this was not a 25, 30 degree.
it's fairly gradual.
Okay, thanks.
I'll say that.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff from board members?
No, not me.
All right, at this time, could we please have either the petitioner or his or her representative approach and make your testimony? All right, as you approach, could you please make sure that you adjust the microphone to the appropriate height? And
Does that work for you?
that's good for me. I think Dee can
Hello?
hear as well. That's the rationale. And if you could please, each of you state your names into the microphone for the record.
My name is Georgie Jacquard.
And my name is Jerome Jacquard.
Great. And if you could both raise your right hand and swear that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth as you know it.
I do.
All right, thank you. Can we set the clock at 15 minutes? And your time will begin in 3, 2, 1.
You want to start?
Go ahead.
Have they not signed
Okay.
in? I apologize. Let's pause the clock for 1 second. If you could please sign in as well. Thought they're signing in. All right, and timekeeper, if you could please be liberal and give them 8 seconds before you start the clock again. And go ahead.
Okay, thank you, first of all, for seeing us and seeing us again. We appreciate that. The purpose of our structure, garage, pole barn, whatever we want to call it, is to store our boat. We bought a boat, so size does matter. We do need it to be a specific size to at least fit that boat. We have tried to get the boat up in our current driveway, but due to the slope, the trailer drags, the prop is not there. The prop just needs to come up a little higher. It just will not fit up in that area. The way our property is designed is it has a fairly large ditch, as Drew said, and it gets a little more minimal as you go down the road. So really the only place we can put it is in that area. It's going to have less disturbance to the ground. It's going to be,
Less impact to the property. When we excavate it, though, they will push the dirt from the front of the road by the ditch and level it out more. Of course, leaving enough structure for a culvert, and then push it towards the back where the slope is. And if need be, our excavator contractor said that we could put in a small retaining wall, whether it be pavers or something, to prevent any further type of erosion, use erosion mats. The plan in the future is, of course, to plant in that area. The front of our property is up and down the street covered with dogwood and redwood trees. So we would replant and put additional trees in. We have 2 right now exactly in that area that are dying. That's where the driveway would go.
we'd also use erosion mesh or the geotextile blanket around the area to keep the erosion. We haven't decided if we're putting rock down or mulch, but something will go on top of that textile to keep the watershed from going down. We also will have a drain pipe in there. So everything, as you could see from the house, we do keep erosion in mind. We do care about our property. We certainly do not want to devalue it at all. So, we do have erosion in mind. So I think a retaining wall would be kind of dual purpose if we even had a garden in there, something that would be aesthetically pleasing to the neighborhood as well as serve a purpose for erosion.
The last thing we'd like to do is build a structure and have the foundation erode out from under it. That's not the purpose for us. We want to use it over a period of time.
Right.
All right, thank you. Does the board have any questions for the petitioner at this time?
I have a couple. What's the size of that boat that you have? How big is it?
Currently, we have we have two actually, a 24-foot. Well, on the trailer, it's approximately about 28 with the front and the back in mind. So a 30-foot structure, we have to watch our limitations backing it in. Originally, we requested 40, but we understand the zoning variance, and that's why we reduced the size of it. We also changed the size of the structure. Originally, it was looking like a barn with a peak in the center. Now we've adjusted it to look more like our current garage, which is taller in the front and slopes back to the back. So that's part of the reason we've done a few of those things.
My second question is, it sounds like you've got a lot of professional advice when it comes to erosion mitigation matters and the cut of the land and so on and so forth. Have you also sought professional advice on those matters as well?
We're dealing mostly with our contractor who's going to do the dirt work. He's worked for a lot of major companies around Bloomington. We've also been assisted with Drew, helping us and telling us what we need to look at and what we need to avoid. So we're really keeping the board's best interest in mind as well as our own.
I also used to work at Ecologic. So I know some of the rules and guidelines, not all of them by any means, but I saw what they did for erosion control. Of course, you know, during the building, we'll put up some sort of a little silt fence there to keep everything from washing down. So we have not spoken to anyone on a professional level as far as the erosion, but some of it we know.
In addition, just so you know, I think we have 8 parcels. Several of them are across the street and that is very steep. There's no way to build over that in that area. So we've looked at every aspect that we possibly can. And we feel that we can do this and minimize the impact to the area as well as to the watershed. Our property actually goes back, I believe, almost 320 feet. So there's quite a distance from where we're building to the bottom of the hill, which would have the impact.
And also there's in that
Slope.
the slope part, there's a huge thick layer of leaves, which also helps with the sediment and stops that from going down that steep hill. Those leaves, there's tons of them.
As you can imagine, the steep area that's in red is heavy to the trees. I mean, it's a forest.
Yeah.
So there's no way to really impact that area.
Thank you.
I have a question. Where is the boat now?
Where is it now?
Yeah,
It's being paid to be stored.
it's in being stored some offsite.
Yes, it's being stored off-site. One of the boats is currently there, but we're leaving town tomorrow, so it's at home right now. We've, in the past, I don't think our neighbors wanted the boats on the road. So I found an additional place to keep them to prevent or limit the amount of disturbance for the neighbors. Actually, one of my neighbors actually recommended that I build a structure. So that's kind of why we're looking for this and with the least amount of trouble.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dee, I cannot see if your hand is up. Do you have any questions?
No, Skip, thank you. I do not.
All right, I just have one quick question. There was a mention of your homeowner association covenants. Can I trust that you are familiar with those covenants? And are there any issues that you feel that you could not resolve with the homeowners association?
My understanding with our homeowners covenants is that I can build a 1,200 or larger house on that piece of property and the other piece of property that I'm not building on, as well as across the street. There's different ways to build houses on slopes, but I don't want to. When Drew asked me about combining the parcels, I have no problem with that. I'm not looking at dividing the property. I like the property the way it is on both sides of the road.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, with no other questions, if you guys could have a seat and
Okay.
we will ask if there is anybody in the audience that wishes to speak in support of the project. Seeing no one, is there anybody online or on the phone? Please raise your virtual hand. You can do that on the phone by pressing *9. I'll give you a moment to do so. All right. If there is anybody in the room which wishes to remonstrate against the petition, please come forward. You can sign in.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for being with us tonight. If you could just make sure the microphone is adjusted so our board member that is off online could hear and speak clearly your name and
Chelsea Moss with Abram Moss Design Group.
great. Could you raise your right hand?
Did she sign in?
What?
Yes, I did.
She did say, yeah, I got that one. Get me once. If you could please tell me that you will speak the truth in the testimony with which you are about to provide.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to give you 3 minutes to go ahead and state your case.
Okay, I'm here on behalf of Polly McInfess Brown, a neighbor to the petitioner. And as a more technical expert looking at this, my two big concerns revolve around those steep slopes, as well as some of the easements offsets. As far as easements and offsets go, I know the petitioner did submit a sketch from Duke. The sketch that was submitted was for residential connections, and it was an elevation clearance sketch, which is for access under those. It did not list their easements, which is the setback, like plan wise, from those lines that you have to stay off, which is the bigger concern in this area. Their website, Duke's website, does state that for Indiana, the typical easement for that type of line is 20 feet, which would mean that the building needed to stay 10 feet off of that line. As best as I can tell from looking at the aerials, looking at the plats and stuff, it looks like that existing line, which serves my client, the McInfess Brown property, it looks like that runs about where that property line is, that front lot line. And the proposed location is a 0-foot setback. So that would mean the front of that building would almost be right on touching that overhead line. And that's a concern. That's the service. It definitely has power service on it. It looks like it has communication service as well on that. So both of those utilities could be affected with that close of an installation, if Duke would even allow that close of an installation. Even if Duke allowed it, I know that planning's perspective is to honor those easements and not let building construction happen within those easements. So that's the first concern. The second is in regard to the 15% slope and eco area. We appreciate that they've tried to minimize the size and tried to keep out of that, but what they're showing on the plan still is just the building footprint. And with that being an eco overlay, we're not just talking about encroachment on the 15% for an actual building footprint. We're talking about any disturbance. So you're going to have machinery running even further out into that 15% or over 15% slope. You're also probably going to have fill that extends and creates an even steeper slope to catch up into that 15% slope. From the drawings I've seen, we are talking about an at-grade structure. We're not talking about a built-up foundation. So there's going to be a good bit of catch up because you have a good bit of fall over the width of that new building. So that's going to extend even further than what's currently shown on their site plan. And that needs to be considered in these discussions.
Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
But I would like to ask you a quick question. So in the first half, your first concern, are you suggesting that the state right of way is the building is on the state
Duke
right of?
easement,
Pardon?
Duke easement,
The Duke.
the power line
easement.
easement. Yes.
All right, and this is on it or over
This,
it?
this would be almost touching the line based on based on the available information, as there's not been a full survey done to capture the exact location, but based on what I can see from aerials in the plat, it looks like the corner of this building would almost be touching the line. Whereas Duke's typical easement is a 10-foot offset from the line on either side, so a 20-foot total easement. So they would be encroaching on that almost 10 feet.
Okay, so from the overheads that you've looked at in the plats, you're suggesting it could be potentially encroaching the Duke. Have you spoken to Duke and do you have?
I have tried to
information?
reach out to Duke. It's a little hard to get a hold of them. I've been bounced around through several people. But I do know that their website does list that their typical Indiana easement is that 20 feet, so
So
10 feet on either side of their line. With this being, it appears that the power line is just about on the property line,
Okay.
and this is, their request is for a 0-foot setback.
Okay.
Which would put it on that
Thank you.
front. Okay.
May I ask the staff, in a situation like that there could be a utility easement situation, what's the process? Does Duke get contacted to say this is a problem or not? How's that handled? And are those overhead lines versus underground lines? I assume they're overhead lines.
They are overhead lines.
Mhm.
That is correct. It's my understanding that the petitioner has they provided additional information recently about the type of setback that they're requesting. I do not remember the exact distance off the top of my head, but I think that they took into account the potential Duke easement. So it would not be a 0-foot setback right on the property line, but there is some distance from the lines. I'm not sure if the petitioner has talked with Duke either. So during their rebuttal time period, I'm sure they'll touch on all of this.
excellent. Are there any other questions of staff at this time? All right. Are there any other remonstrators that wish to speak at this time that are inside the room? All right, we're going to go with the same process. If you can step forward, make sure that mic is there, sign yourself in, and then we'll go ahead and get you sworn in. Thanks.
Can you hear me all right?
All right, just make sure you're speaking into the microphone.
Okay,
And if you start off with telling us your name.
yes, my name is Dan Sear. And since I submitted the letter on behalf of my client Polly Muckenfuss Brown.
All right, gonna get you swearing real quick. Could you affirm that what you're about to provide in testimony is what you know is the truth?
Yes,
Fantastic. Go ahead, 3 minutes.
I have changed law firms, so I just wanted to disclose that I'm no longer with Kerman Parker. I'm with
Okay.
a different law firm. That doesn't mean
Sorry.
really matter. But for purposes of this, I just wanted to focus on the findings of fact and just for a design standards variance, this would be injurious to a natural area. It's obviously a steep slope, Eco 2 zone. It is, if you could please turn to slide 11. In there, that would be one of the slides to look at, but I'll just keep talking. So this is a very small kind of natural environment and the slope is very steep. There's been no showing as to why it has to go right next to my client's property. And it's something that the property owners next to each other have, it's been exchanged for years about, I'm going to put that thing right next to your driveway. And there's no reason for that. There's no reason for that type of dialogue. There's no reason to put it right next to the driveway. They own 8 parcels. They have 2 boats. The practical difficulty cannot be met when you can put it in a storage facility where it is now. There's nothing impractical about needing to store a boat at a storage facility, and it would directly violate the restrictive covenants, which are totally outside of the BZA's jurisdiction. But just as a matter of precedent, it's probably a good idea to not grant variances that are either going to cause someone to build under a power line, in or near a power line, or in violation of a restrictive covenant. So the diagram there is, you correctly pointed out earlier that the yellow boxes have changed in size, but essentially the point is the same, that this is one of the narrowest parts. Do you have, I don't really have the reference, but there's a plat, because there is a survey, if you wouldn't mind finding that. That would show you that this private road actually has size to it that's beyond the visible roadway. And so yes, please. And could you zoom in toward the middle? So my vision's bad. But you'll see that there's a narrow triangle shaped thingy on the east side of that lot. Actually, that's a disputed area. And so what we're talking about has already been shown in the public records to have a muddy property line. So I'll just say, I mean, as far as putting it in a location that makes sense and is going to be, you know, that's probably not the best place to put it on a known encroachment. With regard to the conditions, there's been a verbal commitment to combine parcels, but there's been a written commitment or other conditions. There's been no showing of any demonstration of protecting the environment and creating what Ms. Moss was referring to as a very steep slope. Once you build up that area, once you're off of the property line, you're off of the overhead easement, you are down a very steep drop that may not be in any buildable area at that point. And I'm not a surveyor.
Gonna ask you to finish up your statement, your time.
Sure. And you've seen our submissions and everything, but none of the 3 requirements are met. And there's essentially no practical difficulty. It's about putting in a storage barn.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay.
All right, do we have anybody else in the room that wishes to remonstrate this petition? And while you're approaching, I'll remind you to please go ahead and sign in and then adjust the microphone for yourself. And then we'll get your name and swear you in.
Hi, I'm Polly McIntosh Brown, Mr. and Mrs. Jacquard's neighbor, who is directly on the, oh,
Could I get you to just
Sorry.
affirm
Sorry.
that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth as you know it?
yes,
All right, thank
Yes.
you. 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, I didn't expect to speak here, so I apologize. I'm the neighbor whose property is directly affected by this. And I would prefer it not be placed where it is because it will directly affect my property value and my property line. Also, the big thing that really concerns me is the environment. We're in a watershed. We have turkeys, we have geese, we have deer, we have, you name it, it's there. And this is going to impact them as well as the watershed. And the time has come that we've got to start listening to nature and doing what is right. We can't just keep ignoring covenants. That's your decision, I realize, but we can't keep ignoring covenants and say nature will take care of it, because nature's not going to take care of it. Mr. and Mrs. Jacquard have kept their boat on the road for several years. Not the newest one. The newest one is a beautiful boat, but there's got to be a better place to place it than right on the property line. I don't know what else to say. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, thank you. All right, is there anybody else in the room that wishes to remonstrate the petition? Seeing no one, is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to? If so, please raise your virtual hand. And on the phone, you can do that by pressing *9. All right. At this point in time, we will ask the petitioners if they wish to rebut some of what has been stated by the remonstrators. While you're approaching, I'll remind you that you are still under your oath of speaking the truth as you know it.
I did have an opportunity to call Duke, and I believe that they had faxed me a.
Sorry, could I put you on brief hold? Could we put 5 minutes on the clock, please? Thank you.
I did have an opportunity to get a hold of Duke, and they did fax me a diagram, which I believe I had uploaded, stating the requirements of the electrical line, overhead electric. And so we are building behind, the road is here, the lines are here, we're building behind that. It's not going to be under it. It's not going to, we're meeting the requirements of Duke according to what they sent us. So we did reach out to them. Also, I totally agree with Polly regarding the animals on the property. They are stunning. They're beautiful. We've had tons of pictures of them. We are also members of the National Wildlife Federation. So we do not want to disrupt the paths that they walk. We do not want to disrupt the beauty that they represent. So that is why we're also trying to make sure that the ground stays as it should and everything flows as it should.
That's
Yeah,
well said. That's fine.
yeah. Did you have
Thank you.
anything to add?
No.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Testimony has concluded. Let's go back to any questions that the board may have of staff. Seeing none, D.
Nope, nothing for me. Thank you.
Are you satisfied with that comment about the utility lines? Is that something you would be concerned about as well? Because I saw it several times in the documentation.
So can you hear
Wait,
me okay?
I don't think your mic's on.
Yeah, I could hear. Yeah, thank you.
You could, okay.
Huh. Yeah.
The utility easements are not considered buildable area. So if there is a direct conflict of an easement with the location of the accessory structure, then they would have to come back for an additional variance and also work with the utility company to request this. But if they're stating that they're not in an easement, we do rely on property owners to understand their own easements and their own property lines. And one of the conditions, if granted for the front setback, we are asking that they work with a land surveyor that could help stake out those easements and front property lines as well.
Thank you.
All right. Before we get into any further discussion with the board, is it possible for staff to bring up 812-6 for us on the screen? It's not, or it's
It is
challenging
in the
with-
packet. We have the PowerPoint up right now, and then if we can pull it up on the iPad, we can read it out loud if that's preferable.
I have a hard copy that I keep.
All right. Could you pass it, Pam? Pam, would you mind just going through and, well, no, would you mind just going through and reading it?
You know what you're looking for.
All right, 812-6. In order to approve an application for a design standards variance, the board must find that A, the approval, including any conditions or commitments deemed appropriate, will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community because it would not impair the stability of a natural or scenic area. It would not interfere with or make more dangerous, difficult, or costly the use, installation, or maintenance of existing or planned transportation with utility facilities. The character of the property included in the variance would not be altered in a manner that substantially departs from the characteristics sought to be achieved and maintained within the relevant zoning district, that is the approval singularly or in concert with other approvals sought or granted would not result in a development profile associated with a more intense zoning district and thus effectively rezone the property, and it would adequately address any other significant public health, safety, and welfare concerns raised during the hearing on the requested variance. Letter B, the approval, including any conditions or commitments deemed appropriate, would not affect the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including in the variance, in a substantially adverse manner, because the specific purposes of the design standards sought to be varied would be satisfied. It would not promote conditions on-site or off-site detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the area. And it would adequately address any other significant property use and value concerns raised during the hearing and the requested variance. And letter C, the approval, including any conditions or commitments deemed appropriate, is the minimum variance necessary to eliminate practical difficulties in the use of the property, which would otherwise result from a strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance. All right. And practical difficulties, does that hold the same legal definition in here as hardships? I did not believe it did. All right. Thank you. All right. So any board discussion? We'll start with our friend that is online. Lee, do you have anything to say?
I don't think so. I keep said standards printed out so I can review back to them, and I don't have anything to say about them. I think that we're fine.
All right, thank you, Dee. Guy, Pam,
Me,
anyone?
our comments, is
Yeah,
that, our
Discussion?
comments?
Motions?
You know, I'm sympathetic. This land, it looks like there's darn little possibilities of places to build on. The owners have, did they say 9 different lots? And this may be the only place. I heard the comment that could it be placed somewhere else? It seems to be the ditch problem and it getting narrower, that you could put a culvert under versus maybe a bridge, because that's the only other thing you could do is put a bridge, which we've seen in this county, no question. So there are real practical difficulties of where else to put it. The size does matter in terms of their willingness to cut it down to be just the bare minimum size that they need for it to be. And they seem to be sensitive to wildlife concerns, environmental concerns, willingness to get professional advice. And I find all of that very compelling.
Well, I don't.
Okay.
If there's anything that's pretty sacred to me, it's the slopes around our lakes, our water sources, especially Lake Monroe, which is Monroe County's primary water source. And it looks like this encroaches something like a quarter of the building. And if it was 2 feet, I would have reservations, but it looks like more than that. We don't have any survey. I'm not going to go against what our resources say in the absence of a survey. The property, which I understand is an amazing property, was built without this. Boat storage is not a vital need for this property. From my perspective, it would be very nice. I understand, but they've got the boats stored remotely. Lots of people store their boats on remote sites. In terms of the front yard setbacks and Duke and things like that, I would still have reservations. But even if all those things were resolved satisfactorily for me, this plan encroaches into the 15% slope, and I will, we've had, many things where this came up. The only one I remember going on was when they were going to cantilever the building over the 15% slope and keep the structural stuff out of the the excavation out of the 15% slope, and they were going to do all that by hand digging. I don't see any substantial hardship from protecting the lake, and I will vote against the 15% slope and eco variances.
I just want to remind you, it's not hardship, it's practical difficulty.
Good point. Practical difficulties. Thank you for keeping my terminology accurate.
All right.
And I don't see any the only practical difficulty is they would like to store their boat on site, but that's not something that they're entitled to if it means encroaching on the 15% slope from my perspective.
All right. Thank you, Kai. Are there any motions that anyone would wish to make on this matter?
Well, I would move to deny, let's see. I would move, I don't mind the front yard setback. So I would move to approve variance 2319B and to deny variance 2319C and 19D.
Those are two separate motions. Go ahead and make one of
No.
them.
Okay, yeah, I'll make, well, can we combine 2319 and C and D? Because I think those are substantially, it's the same issue as right. I'm going to move that we deny 2319 C and 19 D, the 15% slope variance and the environmental constraint overlay area 2 with respect to the 2.269 acre parcel in Benton South, located at 6885 East Trailway Drive.
All right, there is a motion on the table. Is there a second? Not hearing a second, is there anybody else that wishes to provide a motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion on variance 23-19B, front yard setback variance from chapter 804 to approve that, the front yard setback with the condition as stated by our planners that a surveyor stakes the property line to construction to confirm the building will be located on the subject property. That and I'll make that one independently and not go to the other two yet.
all right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, staff, could you take roll, please?
It's been moved and seconded to approve VAR 23-19B, which is the front yard setback to chapter 804. A vote in favor is a vote to approve only the front yard setback. Skip Daly,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
and Margaret Clemens has recused herself. So the motion carries 4-0 to 1. Or
All right.
4-0.
Are there any other motions on the table that we can discuss?
Yes, I'll go ahead and move that as Guy said, to combine variance 23-19C and variance 23-19D, buildable area on the 15% slope and the echo area 2 from chapter 825. And that we approve those pending the survey that was requested and pending the ability to know the exact lines of the utility easement.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Staff, I have a question on that motion. Are we the part about knowing where those lines were, that was a little ambiguous to me. Are you able to wave your magic wand and put that into something that is within our scope?
I can try, D, and maybe if you agree with the friendly amendment, we can proceed.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the buildable area 15% to chapter 804 and the eco area 2 to chapter 825 with the conditions stated in the staff report, but I will read it as amended with D's condition. So a surveyor to stake the front property line as well as the Duke easement to confirm that the building will not encroach in either the easement or the right of way.
Yes. Accept that friendly amendment.
Okay.
I do too on the second. Thank you.
All right,
So-
we have a motion that has been seconded. Let's go ahead and take some roll on that.
Okay. Guy Loftman,
No,
D Owens,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Skip Daly,
Yes.
okay, the motion carries 3-1.
Right, thank you. And at this point, if we could bring our chairwoman back, that would be fantastic.
I know. Which was fine. Glad you didn't trip.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daly, for taking over and overseeing that case and the discussion of that case. And the
Might I add, he
deliberation.
did a very good job.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. And so thank you. Okay, so we are on to new business. Item number 1, VAR 23 And this is the Schercher minimum lot width variance to chapter 804 concerning 3.59 plus or minus acre parcel in Washington Township, section 16 at 8527 North Norm Anderson Road. And I believe that Mr. Smith will be discussing this with us. Thank you.
Okay, so the request is one design standard variance minimum lot width to chapter 804. The purpose is to construct an approximate 560 square foot addition to the primary residence at 8527 North Norm Anderson Road. The proposed location meets all setback requirements, but it is situated in a lot width of approximately 100 feet. In this zone, Ag RR, it requires lots to be 200 feet in width. The petitioners have applied for a residential building permit R-23-615. The proposal is to replace an existing deck with an addition to the primary residence. These are just some site conditions map and location map. And then this is some aerial imagery facing west and east respectively. As you can see, Drew, if you can go back a little bit. Go up, yeah. So pretty much every house on this stretch of road is kind of in the same predicament.
I see.
You can continue. These are just some site photos of where the proposed addition will occur. This is just the petitioner's letter to the BZA, as well as their site plan. So for this petition, staff does recommend approval of the minimum lot width variance. Practical difficulties, we believe, have been demonstrated. The location of the existing or pre-existing residence does not meet design standards of the Ag RR zone. A lot line shift is not possible as there does not exist at least 200 feet on either side of the residence without encroaching into the neighboring residential zones. Therefore, no additions to the home can be made without variance approval or seeking a rezone to a zone that has a smaller lot width requirement.
Well, thank you. That was a very good and succinct presentation. So do members of the BZA have questions for staff? I don't think so. So if the petitioner, the petitioner's representative is here and would like to address us, please come to the podium and sign in. Hi. If you would kindly sign in and then I'll swear you in. And then you'll have up to 15 minutes to tell us what you want to do. Way. Here it is, way up there. Okay, would you please state your name?
Bob Schurter.
Mr. Schurter, would you please raise your right hand and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, tell us what you want to do and everything.
just as I said, take off the back deck and add on to the back to move our kitchen to the back and a family area.
Sounds nice. It sounds nice. Does anybody have questions for Mr. Schurter?
What are you thinking of adding on instead of the deck? What will it be in terms of rooms and space? Can you tell us a little more?
A kitchen area is basically one big room and a small room to move our laundry area from the basement upstairs, so we don't have all the steps.
And the septic field is located in the back of the property, isn't it? I saw that on the
Yes.
drawing, correct? Okay, fine. Thank you.
Sounds good. Do you have any questions? Okay, well, we'll hear from the public. And if anybody complains about what you're asking to do, you'll have a chance to come back. Okay, so
Mhm.
thank you. Are there members of the public who are here who would like to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the podium, raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or press *9 on the telephone if you're dialing in by phone. And if we don't see anybody, are there members of the public who are in opposition to this petition? Please come to the podium, raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or press *9 on the telephone. Do you see anybody?
Unfortunately, I can't see the Zoom, so you'll have to rely on the screen or tech services to confirm.
No, I don't see anybody. I only see 4 people online and nobody's raising their hand.
Correct.
So, and 3 of the people are kind of internal to us. Okay, so coming back to members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, we can either discuss this or have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve variance 23-30 minimum lot width from chapter 804.
They second that?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Schurter minimum lot width variance to chapter 804. A vote in favor is a vote to approve. Guy Loftman,
Yes.
D Owens,
Yes,
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Skip Daily,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
Have a very nice time redoing your home. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're moving on to the last item on the agenda. And this is a VAR 23-31 Hunkler buildable area over a 15% slope. And this is a variance to chapter 804. And this concerns 2.7 plus or minus acre parcel in Clear Creek Township, section 06 at 2125 West Dowden Road. And Mr. Myers, if you would review that case with us, we'd be so grateful.
Yes, and I would like to offer correction. There was a typo. It's Dowden Creek Road. I apologize for leaving the creek out, but it's Dowden Creek Road.
Dowden Creek Road. So
Correct.
that's very nice. That's even better. They have a creek. Okay.
All right.
So
So
great.
this is one design standards variance to the buildable area 15% slope to chapter 804. The purpose of this variance is to construct an approximate 2,235 square foot single family residence with a walkout basement design and an attached 3-car garage. There is some information in the staff report that was provided in the packet about the square footages of the proposed structure as well as the proposed site plan. And after that packet was published, the petitioner provided updated information about the size and the design and location. So in this presentation, I'll have some information that will be different than what is included in the packet. So to start, the petitioner stated that the square footage would be approximately 2,200 to 2,400. Most specifically at this time, they're petitioning or they're thinking about building a 2,235 square foot single family residence. The petition site is listed as lot 2 of the Ketchum Ridge subdivision. In March 2023, a representative for the property owners submitted a residential building permit application. Upon review of that application, it was determined by staff that the proposed residence would encroach into slopes greater than 15% and a variance would be necessary. The representative did respond with an interest in receiving the administrative approval for the 15% slope provision that is stated in chapter 804-2E. Those provisions are included in the staff packet. They are basically a relief valve for properties that are in a platted subdivision that have extremely limited buildable area. And then it's the administrator's discretion to waive the 15% slope requirement, given the uniqueness of the site and its presence in a platted subdivision that predates the adoption of the 15% slope countywide provision, which was adopted in 2015. After review, the planning director determined that the provisions of this administrative slope waiver would not apply to this property as enough buildable area is present suitable for residents. And the adjacent lot, staff will note that adjacent lot to the west did receive approval of this administrative waiver by the prior planning director for that 15% slope waiver in that provision. Next slide. I included a slide here with the exact language of that slope waiver provision here, so we can come back and reference it if necessary. Here we have the slope map. So West Dowden Creek Road is to the north of the petition site. That is where they would be receiving access. You'll note that the area that is not shaded in red is the buildable area. So there is a sliver of land just off of the front property line that is buildable. The property slopes downward as you go south, and then you can see there on the towards the bottom of the property before you get to the other roadway, there is a water feature or hydraulic feature. Excuse me. Next slide. Okay, here are some on the ground, boots on the ground pictures of the petition site. Top left photograph is the petition site from West Dowden Creek Road. And then the right picture shows the lot stake that says lot number 2, as well as the petition site, the petition public notice sign. And here we have another picture of the petition site while standing on West Dowden Creek Road. And then the right picture is going down a small cutout mode area to access lot 2, I assume for surveyors or other individuals that are attempting to walk the site and look at the platform. You can kind of tell in that picture and these pictures, you can continue. These pictures that there is a slope to the land. That structure you see in the distance in the top left photograph is the other residence that is on lot 1 of this subdivision. The top right bottom right picture there is just the back area of the site as it continues to slope down towards this creek bed.
It's very pretty.
And here, this last photograph is turning back towards the north, looking at Dowden Creek Road. I attempted to keep the camera as level as possible so you can kind of see how it slopes upward as you get closer to Dowden Creek Road. Okay, here we have the petitioner's letter to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Maybe it's just
That details all the information that they are planning on with this residence. They've been working with a contractor to take advantage of as much slope area as possible. But their ultimate design does involve encroachment into the 15% slope areas. Okay, so this is the most up-to-date proposed site plan that the petitioner has provided. This is not included in the packet as it came after its publishing. If you can go to the next slide, I have a more zoomed in version. And if you will zoom into the starting at the right side, and then we'll scroll slightly over to the left. There we go. That's good. So are proposing a driveway coming in on the far east side of the property off of Dowden Creek. And then the garage will be facing east towards that driveway. And then, of course, the remainder of the structure you can see here outlined in blue, kind of surrounds the 3-car garage and then extends south as well as west into some sloped areas. The septic field does take up a considerable amount of the existing buildable area. You can see that it's located here on the screen on the far west side of the property. And we can, of course, come back to this since it's the most up-to-date design for this petition. Okay, that brings us to the staff recommendation. Staff recommends denial of the buildable area 15% slope to chapter 804, essentially stating that practical difficulties have not been met. The buildable area issue can be more effectively addressed through further redesign or relocation of the development building or structure. I will now take any questions.
Okay, do members of the Board of Zoning Appeals have questions for staff?
I do.
Oh, yes, Ms. Owens, and then Mr. Loftman.
Thank you. Yeah, initially it said the house and the garage are going to be over 6,000 square feet. This is the third, 2/3. I mean, it's considerably smaller. And the septic, this newer picture also shows the septic field. So am I correct that a septic field cannot also be put in 15% slope?
That is correct. The health department does have a 15% slope provision for approved septic locations.
Okay, well, then as far as the practical difficulties piece goes, if you have a driveway at almost to one edge of the property, you got the 25-foot setback, and then you got the septic field where it was approved. They don't have anywhere else to go except right where they're at. I don't understand where else you would have them go as a practical matter to build.
I think that's a question of asking where was your recommendation as to where 2,400 square feet could be built on this property?
Yeah, so staff doesn't have a recommendation of where that size of a structure can go on the property. That's not our role to determine that. Our role is to apply the strict application of the zoning ordinance, which would say, you know, you can reduce the size of the residence and it still be a residence and meet the buildable area.
Absolutely, I understand that. Hey, I have a quick question as perhaps a follow-up to that. The adjacent neighbor apparently did receive at some point through a separate administration. And I understand that's apples and oranges. But what is the construct of the neighborhood? Is 2,400 square feet livable? Is that in is that in common support of what's going on in the rest of the neighborhood?
Yes, I believe that there is actually a covenant, a subdivision covenant that states that a residence has to be a minimum of 2,000 square feet. And again, as I stated in the last petition, planning staff does not enforce those covenants and restrictions. Yeah.
Okay,
Right, thank you.
thank you. And Mr. Loftman?
Yeah, I'm looking at this drawing and I don't see a nice blue line or anything showing me where the 15% slope is. There's sort of a wiggly line.
There was a slide a few back that you
Okay, I
mentioned,
need to- I
It's
need
right-
to-
you mentioned the creek.
It would.
If you, Sean, if you scroll back to the, just the one that's zoomed in, I can walk up to the screen here and point it out. to you.
Right. Right.
It's a long walk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
By the way, Mr. Myers.
So this line here, 15%, this is buildable. And here's the line again.
That's buildable.
So this, everything that's hatched is buildable. And they're extending this direction south into over 50%.
It's
All this.
16 to 18%, right? I mean, they're requesting the variance for the living room, which is in between 16 and 18% slope. And the vaulted back porch is in an 18% slope. And so is the uncovered deck. Is that correct?
That's what I'm seeing.
I don't know if this map or this drawing shows exactly the percentages of slope that those areas are. Certainly we could.
It's
Those numbers I think that you're looking at are the dimensions of the addition.
But under the vaulted covered back porch 15 by 18, it says 18.01. Is that the slope?
That is the distance.
I
from-
see.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah, that's its dimension.
Okay,
Yeah,
Looks like about 20 feet on one side and 16 feet on the other side are encroaching.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, do you have?
this is, yeah, this is not an ecological conservation area, correct?
No, this is not in the environmental constraints overlay area. It's just the chapter 804 countywide 15% slope.
Thank you.
Okay, do members have any further questions of staff?
I do not.
Okay, with that being said, let's hear from the petitioner, the petitioner's representative. Please come to the podium and sign in. Or if you're online, we'll hear from you that way. First, if you'll sign in and then I'll swear you in. And if you could both sign in, we'd be grateful if you're both going to speak. Yeah,
Yeah, we are both speaking.
okay.
Well, that's fine. I'll let them go.
Say the sign for her.
Well, no, she'll do that. Then I'll swear her in.
Try to help.
Okay, and could you please state your name and raise your right hand? And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
My name is Damon Lewis and I do.
Okay, thank you. So please, we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, actually, I was gonna give my mother a chance to speak, or is she not?
We're here.
Make sure you're speaking into the microphone so
Oh,
Dee
yeah.
can hear you.
Yes. Is your mother going to speak now?
Yes, I believe she had a little introduction for herself that she wanted
Okay.
to.
So if staff could unmute Mrs. Hunkler, and Mrs. Hunkler, would you please state your name, raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jennifer Hunkler and I'm here with my husband, Aaron Hunkler.
Hello.
And could you both raise your right hands, and do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So altogether, you'll have 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, I guess as you can see with the evidence we sent in, this lot is very challenging. We've attempted probably 9 designs to try to fit it in a buildable area before we found out where the septic location was going to go. So when we found that out, we had to completely redo it again. And then realizing, yes, we'll have to get a variance because it would go back further. We needed it to be deeper. Since it was only leaving us about a 30-foot deep home, that was just not feasible for our forever home. So with the original report, it had mentioned something about having 3,000 square feet to build. And we weren't quite sure, where this 3,000 square feet is. Because with our calculations, we were only given like a 40 by 30-foot area in the middle between the septic, the garage, and the driveway area. So therefore, that's why we were requesting approval to be able to go back deeper and then around the garage, behind the garage. This lot is really beautiful overlooking the creek area. So that's why we want to have a covered walkout porch on the back, and then an uncovered area for like grilling. And entertaining. But I guess the question is, we've had really no recommendation or guidance on where we can build to fit, within the 15 slope. It's just, we can't see it working to what we want to put in our house. Did you?
Yeah, we also have covenants and restrictions that require a minimum of 2,000 square foot home with an attached 2-car garage. So we're kind of just a little over, that minimum requirement by the covenants and restrictions.
And we were also told by Smith Design Group to turn the garage sideways due to the elevation and water flowing into your garage doors if it faced front. So that also took away to add that driveway to pull in, because we had to now turn the garage sideways to have a side entry garage. And then we also have to make room for the septic tank, which has to be 10 feet off of the house, I guess, on the west side near the septic field location. So we still have we're cutting it close even still with this design, kind of with the knowing or having enough room to know where to put the tank as well. So we have to keep that in mind as something.
Okay.
I think that's it. And then Damon, if you have any.
Yeah, Damon, you can go.
I had a plan showing the allocated square footage of buildable area for a desired home layout.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
This color code is my lighting, so I'm colorblind. And it will show that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear whoever's speaking.
Sorry about that. That plan shows that there's a little less than 2,300 when you're not counting in the dead space behind the septic, because otherwise you'd have a long hallway. But it shows that there's a little under 2,300 to fit a family home and a 2-car attached garage. That attached garage alone, at even cutting it down to 30/30, it's still pushing 1,000 off that less than 2,300. So they
Okay.
have in the thousands of square footage to be able to build that. And they It's a perfect lot for a walkout.
Use the mic, please.
Sorry about that.
Just pointed at you.
Yeah. It was a beautiful lot and a good, very good developed lot for a beautiful walkout basement home, especially like she said, their forever home. They don't want to be climbing stairs when they're getting older. And that's pretty much all I had at the moment.
Okay, well then, do members of the BZA have questions for the petitioner? Oh, do you have questions, Mr. Daly?
So what we're seeing is the updated design, at least for the board members that are here in person are seeing the updated design. Is that what this is?
No, that is just showing the existing conditions and the allocated space based off of the approved septic field, allocated space for a driveway and what they would have to work with for an actual home footprint. And that's not even including the 2 to 5 feet you're going to need for backfill on sides of the house, back of the house. So that's just basically showing how much space is allocated within that buildable area.
So in other words, this
Okay,
is.
demonstrating a practical difficulty. Okay,
Yes.
fair enough.
That
Okay.
and she has, sorry, is my time up? I was one more thing I wanted to add.
That's fine.
She did get with the designer for the home plan. She did try to make that work. She built it wasn't desired at all. The reason for building it was to avoid a variance to try to obey all regulations, restrictions, and setbacks ordinances. And she had tried her best to design I think it was approximately 136.5 by 36-foot deep home, which was almost equivalent to around a double wide trailer, give or take. But she tried to make it work, and in the end, she just couldn't get it, not for what they need it for, or not even for that, just for a reasonable house.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Hunkler. Do members of the BZA have questions for the Hunklers? No? Okay, so if anybody speaks in opposition to this petition, you'll have an opportunity to return.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the, thank you. Please come to the podium. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
So please raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes. And
Thank you.
for the record, I'm Katie Stein. And so you typically see me on the professional side for Smith Design. So I will, full disclosure, our firm has been hired by the Hunklers to provide their certified site plan, which is a requirement for building a residential home.
Yes.
We were hired for that prior to the variance being needed. But I am here speaking tonight because this petition is in my neighborhood. I live in this neighborhood and have gotten familiar with the Hunklers over the last couple of months as they've been working through their home design. And I just say that I am in full support of this variance. They have clearly done their due diligence. They have done their homework. They have looked at several different options, designs, things like that, to try to make the best home that they can with the least amount of disturbance. And I think what they have proposed tonight also meets the compatibility of the architecture within our neighborhood. These are people's forever homes, and they want it to look nice. If you've driven through the neighborhood, you'll see people are very concerned, or the homes are well taken care of. I'll put it that way. A lot of families in here, we're excited for the Hunklers to come, and we're just hoping that they can build their house that they want for their happiness that they want. Lot 3 that's right next door to them, this is going to be a similar situation. That is a site that, to do a walkout basement, that is a prime example. That is one that was done very, very well. And this will be very, very similar to that. So I'm here for their 100% support behind granting this variance.
Well, thank you so much for coming to support the petition. And are there members of the public, other members of the public who'd like to speak in support? Oh, yeah, please come to the podium and sign in and we're having enough technological problems tonight. And yeah, we could. Sign in music, a dance. And would you kindly raise your right hand and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, and your name, sir?
My name's Brian Moore.
M-
I am the developer of the subdivision, original developer.
Oh,
I'm a registered professional engineer and just came to speak in support of this fine family building in there. And just pass along a couple of comments. The project has been a long project that's probably 15 years ago when that was platted and we opened it up and things were a little different then, but it's been a neighborhood that has grown kind of slow, but it's filled out with wonderful people, wonderful homes, and it's turned out better than and fulfilled my vision for what it was. That's my only development project in my history, and it's turned out real well, and we're happy with it. I did want to pass along that the lot, there's only after this lot, there's only 3 lots remaining in there. So basically everything else has filled out and been built out very nicely. As Katie spoke, the adjacent home to this, the way they've handled their lot in the back there, and like any drainage or erosion issues you might imagine, it's very, very thick and the wooded vegetation, and the whole subdivision is like that. It's very much park-like. And so anyway, we're very much in support of it and would recommend for approval.
thank you, Mr. Ward. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of this petition? If so, come to the podium or raise your virtual hand or press *9 on the telephone if you're calling in. And so we don't see anyone. Is there anyone who is in opposition to this petition? Please come to the podium, raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or press *9 on the telephone to be recognized. So we see no one. Is there further discussion by members of the Board of Zoning Appeals and or a motion? Do you have any questions? Do you have anything to consider?
I think I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay,
I think, yeah, I would like to move to approve variance 23-31, the Hunkel buildable area 15% variance to chapter 804 for property located on Dowden Road.
Dowden Creek Road.
Dowden Creek Road, excuse me.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to
could-
approve.
Could I ask a question of both Ms. Davidson and Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Would you say that there are some that if this were approved, it will not be injurious to public health
I would say it will not be injurious to public health
or to the community?
or to the community,
Okay.
which seems to be very in favor of this.
Yes, and if this were to be approved, are there do you think it would adversely affect the property values of surrounding properties?
I can't imagine that it would adversely affect property values of the surrounding locality.
Okay,
No.
and do you think they've demonstrated practical difficulties?
The fact that we've heard that they have gone through 9 different designs and have worked very hard to accommodate the septic field. And as Ms. Owen says, it's hard to imagine where else it could be located, given how much effort they've come up with this design and to fit the covenant of 2,000 square foot minimum
And the attached garage.
and the.
So
attached
do you
garage.
agree with all those things in your motion, both Pamela and Dee?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So we
Thanks
can
for
call the
asking
roll.
that. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
It's been moved
Okay.
and seconded to approve VAR 23-31, which is the Hunkler buildable area 15% slope variance to chapter 804. A vote yes is a vote in favor to approve the variance. Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clement.
Yes.
Skip Daly,
Yes.
Guy Lockman,
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, the Hunkler family, and thank you for coming here today and for all the work you went through to make a nice home. Thank you. Thanks for everybody supporting this too. Okay,
I motion we adjourn.
okay, I second that. Any objections?
None.
And staff, thank you. Your reports were fabulous, all of you. Really good. Thank you. Okay, have a good night, everybody.
Oh, my.
Go from here.
So we can build. We can build past the slope.
Wouldn't you know?